Not long ago, a Time magazine cover story called New York City, the Big Apple, a rotting apple, a city that was losing jobs, tourists, and the middle class. Admittedly, there are still too many people unemployed and uneducated, but real estate is booming, tourists are flocking, and more the Big Apple is beginning to look like apple pie. But is it all just on the surface? No. Go down into the subway.
Please stand to the side, let the exiting passengers off, do not block the pathway.
Subway riders in New York actually letting passengers off, being obedient.
Continue to move. Be considerate of your fellow passengers.
They're not shoving, they're not pushing, they're moving in a single file. Who'd have thought? It's part of a new test program called Step Aside, Speed Your Ride.
Stay clear the closing doors, please, and have a good day. When I say good morning to them, they're responding, good morning back, have a good day.
We're in New York, right?
Yes, we're in New York City, in the heart of New York City. Grand Central Terminal.
And people are being cheerful.
Yes, they are.
Polite. They're not pushing, no more elbows.
It really is like the siege has lifted after 10 or 15 years of a siege mentality, of triple locks and pit bulls in the living room and all that. It has, in fact, changed.
Hard-boiled, long-time New York reporter Pete Hamill is now the editor of the New York Daily News. Crime is really down.
Yes.
This is not some kind of fudging of numbers.
No.
This is not a seasonal thing.
No. It's not only statistically recognizable, you can feel it in the sense of the city. The sense of menace has ebbed.
No wonder. The city is leading the country in reducing crime. Murders have been cut in half since 1992. New Yorkers seem to have relaxed, and you see one New York contradiction after the next. Polite subway riders, and you can find peaceful, quiet moments at Bellevue, the city's largest hospital. 4 or 5 years ago, if I were here in the ER with you, would I be seeing something completely different? Would I be...
More noise, more blood, more people with gunshot wounds, and every day, almost every day, every other day, we'd see someone who was shot to death. We just don't see it. It's a much less common event.
Here's another surprise. Tourists flocking to Harlem.
Willkommen in Harlem. Dutch or Francais?
Français.
Ah, Francais. Bonjour, madame.
With crime way down, Harlem today is one of the most popular stops for tourists.
Yeah.
42nd Street, once the boulevard of peep shows, now you see Mickey. Disney's coming here. And Times Square, notoriously seedy, grungy Times Square, it's amazingly clean. Up and down New York, we found signs of life improving.
Can I taste it?
Why not? It's the best in the world.
We're at Katz's Deli on the Lower East Side.
I want to ask you whether you detect a change out there in the city.
Yes. There's less crime, less crazy idiots running around, and there ain't too many dope addicts running around.
This is Mott Haven in the South Bronx, where drug dealers used to own the neighborhood. James Roundtree runs a soup kitchen. If I were standing right here 5 years ago,
you would be standing in a wasteland with the addicts all around, winos and everybody around. This is a whole different situation. This was a no man's land.
Well, what about Crown Heights in Brooklyn, the site of rioting 6 years ago between blacks and Orthodox Jews? Youth counselor Richard Green was on the front lines back then. Today, he and Hasidic Rabbi Shea Hecht say the edge is off. Now, are you two friends?
Depends what you call the word friends.
We may not hang out on Sunday together, but we respect each other. Bottom line is I can pick the phone up and give him a call. We're no longer two ships passing each other in the night.
I believe there was a tremendous change and an honest change.
As we were talking, the people in that neighborhood began shouting at us.
You gotta speak to people that live.
Where do you live?
Do they want to speak? That's what she said.
We expected to hear that things had not changed that much for them.
Do you feel that things are different?
Oh, yeah.
Better?
Oh, yeah.
You feel it? You can sense it.
It's better.
You speak to the average citizen out there on the street, and they will tell you almost unequivocally that they feel a different climate.
There is some kind of monumental sea change going underway among young American blacks, because that's where the crime rate is down. And whether that was the end of the crack fade, the Million Man March, nobody knows, because we as reporters have done such a terrible job, we don't know why.
You can't really put your hands around it.
Exactly, because I think like anything truly interesting and monumental in a society, it's complicated.
The whole question of the New York turnaround is complicated. Some say it's because of the boom on Wall Street and the general improvement in the economy. Others say it's the subsiding of the crack epidemic. Still others point to the city's new crime strategy.
Gary, what does it look like on the 104 side? What kind of a week have you been having?
Every week at 7 a.m., the NYPD's top brass gathers at headquarters to zero in on one precinct's performance at a time.
16 robbery arrests so far last month. If you look at the robberies, the majority occurring in Sector John.
It's called CompStat, short for computer statistics. Computer screens show captains block by block which crimes are up in their neighborhoods, and then they are held responsible for bringing those numbers down.
For the record, on that 7-3 precinct case, crime scene was never notified. We'll hope that gets corrected.
And they'll tell you the way to get things corrected is to put the cops where the crime is and keep them there.
The difference between this time and every other time is that we have not left that location. We still have 2 officers assigned to that place 7 days a week, 24 hours a day.
And it's not just the hardened criminals they're going after. They're also aggressively cracking down on petty offenders like loiterers, public drinkers, and squeegee men who mopped your windshield whether you liked it or not.
It's essentially saying that you have to deal with the small problems. You can't just ignore them completely, otherwise they become big problems.
The man who takes and often gets the credit for the new crime strategy is the tough, combative mayor, Rudy Giuliani, the first Republican to run the city in 20 years.
Professor Wilson, about 20 years ago when he was at Harvard, first propounded this theory that if you have a building and a couple of people break a window in your building, you better fix that window right away, because if you don't deal with it, eventually somebody will break another window and another one and another one, and your building will fall down. Let's put some emphasis on street-level drug dealing, not just let it run rampant, prostitution, graffiti, aggressive panhandling.
One of the things he's done is he's gone after the little things. How much has that been a factor in giving people hope and making people feel positive?
I think that it's symbolic in a way. It's saying you can get something done, because if you can tell an idiot with the boombox to knock it off and not get shot, you've already, and he actually turns it down because someone might come over and tap him on the shoulder and take him down to the police station. I think that gives you hope that you want to live in that society.
Columnist curmudgeon Jimmy Breslin disagrees.
You don't see the panhandlers on the street. You don't see drug dealers on every corner anymore. The squeegee men aren't out there.
Oh, the squeegee men.
Yeah.
Oh, God, what a danger. Do you know how many murders they committed, the squeegee men? How many crimes they committed?
You don't buy this theory that if you do these small little things, life gets better?
What about 1 million people in school that you're not teaching while you're concentrating on squeegee men so that the people driving home to Jersey aren't bothered? Come on, please.
But there's this theory that if you do these little things, the people get
Whose theory? Somebody from Harvard or Yale has a theory on that broken window in a building or something?
Yes.
Let them stay in New Haven, huh?
There's no renaissance in Black and Latino and poor and working class communities.
Richard Perez, a leader in the Hispanic community, says the police strategy gives officers broad license to stop and search anyone they want. The fact is that while crime is down, complaints about police harassment have gone up.
The quality of life stop and search laws we hold are a violation of constitutional and civil and human rights, and what they amount to is a virtual state of siege in poor communities where the police say if a community is drug prone, if there's drugs being sold in that community, they have the right to stop anyone, demand identification, the kind of identification that they want. My son wears baggy pants, and I worry that he fits a profile in the minds of many white police officers who come from segregated communities outside New York City, who view him first not as a human being, but as a potential perpetrator.
There's a concern that with all the police on the street, stopping people left and right, that you're going to end up, if you don't have it already, with the civil liberties problem. that people's rights to walk down the street are being abridged.
Well, let me tell you what rights were being abridged before this. People's right to live was being abridged. People's right to be able to walk through a place and not be mugged or raped or beaten.
Is there not a trade-off? You don't feel there's a trade-off there?
Would you give up your rights? Would you give up your rights? Would you agree to live under virtual police state conditions and have
but
your
you're
children?
exaggerating.
I'm not exaggerating.
It's no exaggeration either that the mayor's cuts in government jobs have produced pockets of high unemployment, that there's a real crisis in the schools, that Giuliani sliced $1 billion out of the education budget, that classrooms are overcrowded and reading scores low. Now the mayor promises to put half that money back, but spending per student is still the lowest it's been in 9 years. But the critics are often drowned out by the boosters who say the crackdown on crime has created such a feeling of rebirth that companies and megastores, wary of moving to New York just a few years ago, are streaming in. And thanks to generous tax breaks, Disney is investing $8 million to renovate a theater on 42nd Street. But some say the city is in danger of being Disney-fied.
Why should Times Square be safe for children? I mean, they have the whole rest of the country.
Writer Fran Lebowitz says Mayor Giuliani's vision of New York is sucking the life out of the city.
He's kind of turned this from the, Big Apple to the Big Apple pie.
What do you say to those who say people like you are romanticizing the gutter?
I'm not romanticizing the gutter. I didn't move here when I was 18 years old because I heard how clean it was. You came here because you thought it would be interesting, and it was. And it's significantly less interesting now.
What do you think of Giuliani?
Not much.
But there are those who think that without his hard-nosed, uncompromising personality, nothing would have changed in this town.
There are people who feel that you need to have a mayor who's an SOB to lead this tough city. And that if he's not difficult, maybe a little mean-spirited, that you can't lead this place, you can't run this place.
Being tough and being biased are two different things. He's unfair. He's rewarding those who have, and he's punishing those who have not. That's not tough. That's just ugly.
I didn't vote for him, but it must be said for him. He seized the moment. He came in and said, we're going to change this, and he did. I wish there was more grace to the man. That's all. I think you can have order and grace at the same time.
Poor people, middle-class people, rich people have the sense of you as someone who is treating the city like we're all a bunch of children, that you're our daddy, and you're a strict daddy. This is your image.
Well,
Do I have to tell you this?
I don't care what my image is. What I care about is the results.
Have you been to Times Square?
Yeah, with the celebration of the corporations on the signs. I love it. There's no dirt.
Yeah.
No dirt at all.
Yeah.
City dies unless it's got some dirt and a little raciness.
You don't think that it's good that you can walk down 42nd Street and hookers aren't coming up to you every second?
Who's going to be there? What's
Well, they're going to have Disney. There's going to be
Disney. I'll take the hookers.